Big Texas howdy to everybody.
Yeehaw.
I'm David with Parsec and IQ Protocol. Parsec is a blockchain data company, and IQ Protocol focuses on NFT renting.
Hello? Perfect. Hey everyone, Simon Harmgart here. I work with David as well, Parsec and IQ Protocol. I'm up in Canada, close to the Toronto area, and it's great to be here. So thank you for having me.
Hey guys, I'm Jeff J. Hunter, and started something called the Crypto Gaming Team. We work with a bunch of game developers and do cool stuff.
They're men of many words, these guys. Lots of words here.
Well, I just want to say I'm happy to be on a panel with Canadians, which is great.
Except me. I'm Californian. But yeah.
I'm not happy.
You're
to be
close.
but finally some nice people. No, but part of the panel I'm here because I've been involved in games a long time, particularly mobile games. So that's pretty much my background.
Well, let's start it out with how are we bridging between like traditional gaming and blockchain-backed gaming? Like how are you seeing this future of, like, let's say my 17-year-old who's content to sit at home and do his thing with whatever game he's playing now. How are we going to get them interested? How are we going to get women of my age to understand like the benefits of blockchain-backed gaming? And you guys can just go for it. Whoever wants to answer, don't be afraid of the mic.
I could try to answer that, I guess. Can I rephrase that?
Sure.
No, I'm not going to. Okay. So I think that a big driver of interest in blockchain gaming is really the income. How much can somebody earn from playing these games? And that's where we're at right now. So you have games that aren't really fun to play, but people can earn a lot. And I think that that's good enough to bring in some people to play, but really the games have to get better to drive more people playing it. So I think that the gamification can drive a huge wave of people into the space, and NFTs is a way to do that because you get to take your NFTs with you from game to game to game, and I think that's what most people are trying to build. Like Austin's cowboy boots, if you want to turn those into a NFT and then wear those in the metaverse, like in Sandbox or something later down the road, he could totally do that. So
NFT my motherboard tattoo, and I just take it with me everywhere.
yeah, I think I would wear that too.
Wow. First off, I don't think that we have to push people into Web3. I think the real amazing part right now is just that eventually we'll be in a point in time where my hat won't say crypto gaming team, it'll just say gaming team, So my background, I actually used to work with game developers way back in the day, early 2000s. I ran huge gaming leagues. I used to own esports teams. I had a company called Esports Media that we sold. I worked with Justin.tv back in the day. We were the #1 streamer. Now Justin Kahn has moved on to something called Fractal, and him and I were just out on a Twitter Spaces. I guess he said it, not me. The pioneer of gaming, I guess. But what's really interesting is this is the same dilemma that we had back in the freemium days. And if you guys don't remember, a lot of games came out in the early 2000s. You had to pay $50-$60 for a game. And then this new model came out, the freemium, and I was actually working with Riot Games on the release of a game called League of Legends, which still is around today. And it's insane, right? There's not a lot of games that are like still actively playing today. And I remember bridging that same problem. I was doing marketing and branding at that time. And I feel like we're in that era right now where people are kind of skeptical of crypto. There's obviously been a lot of issues in crypto. There's been rug pulls. But what's really exciting about the space is the ownership aspect. And I think that that's something, whether you like gaming or not, what's cool about gaming is that you can earn, and yes, I happen to agree with you, that right now it's gamified gambling. There's not a lot of real good games out there, right? So I get probably 100 pitch decks a month that I review. I have 190 investors behind the crypto gaming team. We invest in a lot of games. Actually, excited to talk to you guys later because we advise a lot of crypto game companies. But I think the real interesting part here is it's not going to be really hard to sell this idea, because there was an article made just this week about Diablo 3. Diablo 3, if you were to buy to become the best person in Diablo 3, it would cost $110,000 to gear up, to get the right helmet, to get the right gear, to get all the in-game items. It would be $110,000, and yet we have people saying that NFTs are a scam, right? So this is a really great, amazing time where we can actually have that ownership in the game. And the developers, there's a fine line where game developers can win still by having the marketplace where they're taking a fee, where they're going to have loot boxes just like every other game. And what's crazy is there's already games that are incredibly placed and positioned to be crypto games. Fortnite, Call of Duty, Super Mario Brothers. Super Mario Brothers. I don't know how old you guys are. I'm turning 40 this year, but I can't tell you how many times I've jumped up to smash those damn coins. And then you turn it off and they're gone, right? And now we move into this new Web3 where ownership of game assets is actually ours. And for me, now that I'm 40, I don't really have time to play games anymore. And if I can't pass a level, I would love to just buy a couple one-ups from you, right? So that's really where I feel like the ushering in is, and not to mention, and we can go later on this panel, but what this does for equity worldwide when we start looking at underserved communities around the world, like Philippines, Brazil. I have 1,500 people right now that play video games for me every day, and we do a profit share. And they've never had to spend a penny. I buy all the NFT assets, I buy all the gaming assets, and they play the game. So I went down that rabbit hole. I'm going to stop.
Perfect. I'll just expand on that a little bit. I think like the ownership is one of the key aspects, but also with ownership, I think we have to do a lot of education to tell people what real ownership means. And I think like a classic example of that was, I don't even know, it feels like 2 weeks is like a year in crypto, but I think last year or could have been this year, overnight, the Facebook thing where that person, I think it was a young lady that had I think it was a meta tag or metaverse tag. Her handle was like Metaverse. And when Facebook changed the company name to Meta, just overnight that magically disappeared, right? So imagine if every NFT, every handle was an NFT, right? That wouldn't have been able to happen. So all of these games right now, a lot of all of these skins that people buy is just sitting on some centralized server, right? And you're trusting these companies to do it, right? And also on top of that, if games, it's hard for games to work together to move these assets across games, and we're working on that as well. But yeah, what does true ownership mean? I think there's a lot of education that needs to really happen before we get into the average person knowing the advantages of why an NFT skin is better over a traditional gaming skin. And I think like traditional companies, we're talking to some, we're talking to a lot of different teams. Some of them come from some pretty big gaming companies before and have started their own gaming like production studios. And I think some of the big gaming companies are starting to look at it right now. You're starting to hear some of them explore it, but it's also hard because they're trying to like their business model sort of relies on their current way of doing things, right? So I think as a crypto audience, we really need to push the gaming boundaries and build those really high quality games in order to like make them be like pay more attention to us and be say, hey, we really need to move into this space and we need to adopt NFTs. So the better games and the funner games that we can build, I think will also push adoption a little bit quicker as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure what your original question was anymore.
To be honest, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So how to adopt the? Yeah. I mean, there's so many angles. I'm gonna do my boring old man routine and talk about history. But the point is, if you look at tech revolutions, Web 1, Web 0 actually, Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, I don't know. Web 0 is like the 90s. You play Prince of Persia on Pentiums. That was and Web 1, this basic online. Yeah, that's like Web -1. And then Web 2, I mean, that's where I kind of build my career around like mobile and social games and things like that. And I think Web 3 to me, first thing that gets me most, well, not most excited, let's say, but the thing that confirms that something's happening is that there's a new way of playing games. And you look at, back in 2008 when I got really into iPhone and Android. It was about iBeers and iFarts, and everyone made fun of anyone doing iPhone development, iOS apps. I think people are making fun of crypto games right now. There's a lot of people making fun of crypto games, and I think that's a great sign because something huge is happening. So that's the first thing to me. This idea that we're talking about this and this is happening, it's a sign that a huge new wave of computing is upon us, and it's probably going to be exciting to talk about crypto games for the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years. But then real enterprise and crazy adoption is going to happen where everyone's going to have like some sort of crypto something. Okay, so that's one angle. The other angle that I'm excited about crypto gaming, and I think that's where adoption comes in, is that when you explain things to people in a boring old corporate way, they don't get it, right? When you talk about games and fun things and the whole Eli 5, explain it like I'm 5, and you simplify it, people are excited. So, we're building a game right now, and one of the things I love about the game, one of the things amongst many others, is the fact that I actually think we can actually build games right now in Web3. I just really hate the crypto word a lot. That's a thing. But Web3 games, you can actually design them in ways that get people who are not gamers to play them, and that's where the casual gaming that I'm excited about comes in. Kind of like the Farmville and the back in the day the one thumb thing. You just 2 minutes Candy Crush. Candy Crush Saga is still like incredibly high earning game, right? The funny thing about Candy Crush
It's
Saga,
a joke when I say that, but like it's brilliant.
yeah, it is, right?
Brilliant.
Or like, I worked on stuff like back in the day, like Bejeweled and things like that. And yeah, or like, we're basically like Bassmaster, like where you just tap a button and you like fish and whatever. So I
Was it
think,
like the clones, like attack. No, that's Star Wars. There was something.
yeah, I worked on like a bunch of stuff, even like, yeah, like Duke Nukem and stuff like that. You just like keep shooting and shooting, or like The Sims for mobile and things like that. But I think if imagine building like a simple casual game right now. That's not necessarily for gamers. I mean, you can build 3D games and fun stuff like that and get gamers excited. But I'm excited about getting my wife into crypto.
Well,
And she's not a gamer, so just build something and then.
I don't know if how old you guys are, but I have a 9-year-old, and for me, I'm so
I got
excited.
a bunch of those.
Yeah,
I got a bunch of those.
I'm just so excited. I have a 9-year-old, and it feels like right now, like all the old school's coming back, like the 8-bit, the 16-bit. Like Minecraft is still huge. Roblox, right? Like these are things that could have been designed in the 90s.
So for Mother's Day, my 17-year-old gamer installed an emulator on my computer so I could play Zelda. Like
Man.
that's my
legit.
flex.
Yeah.
That's my kid.
But here's a funny
kid,
story about
brother.
that, actually. Here's a funny story. So I'm working with my kids. I have 4 kids. So I'm working with my kids on like games and NFTs and stuff like that. And actually, I'm encouraging them to design games based on their ideas and things. And there's all these cool gaming consoles now. So I got them like a Raspberry Pi, and we played along with it. And they built this sort of like punk basic thing with like 2 dots. They took it to school, and all the kids just went nuts over that thing.
Who
over,
doesn't
like,
know
the
what a
Xbox.
Raspberry Pi is and would like for us to explain it? Okay, that's what I thought.
Go for it.
So, at the bare minimum of anything, like even whatever's in here is a board, right? It's a circuit board. Just like I have here. And so a Raspberry Pi is simply the basic circuit board with the inputs and outputs, and you can make a very, very basic robot. You can display something on the screen. It's literally just the bare bones of a computer, and you can do anything with it. And it's nice because it's like a kit. You can get these, and it's called Raspberry Pi, spelled Pi, like the number. And we can create robots with it. We can put games on there. You can build a little Linux box for it. So when we say that, like, oh, we just grabbed this Raspberry Pi, it's a physical piece of hardware that you can use and do anything with. We used one to like hack some Wii games and hack in a loose sense.
Ethically.
Yeah, like but yeah, anyway, so anytime you want us to stop and explain something, we'd be happy to. Well,
Can I just add
would.
something on the Raspberry Pi
Yeah.
thing? I think one of the things that excites me about gaming is, on the geeky side of things, is what you can actually explain with games, right? Like kind of like educational. Here's one example with Raspberry Pi and stuff. I'm all about VMs right now, and blockchains and all
Virtual
that.
machine.
Yeah, virtual machines. And so WASM, right, like WebAssembly and stuff. So the fastest WASM WebAssembly, VM right now is called WASM 3. It's super, 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 super fast, like very fast. And if you go to the GitHub, it's really cool. It's so fast that it runs on Raspberry Pis, on Arduinos, on everything. And there's actually people building games in WASM 3 on Arduinos. And I think to me, it's crazy because you get like a little Raspberry Pi and, an Arduino or Raspberry Pi or whatever, and you see a little game, and you're like, how'd you build this? WASM? What's WASM? WebAssembly? What's WebAssembly? So I think it's such an intro.
Like
I'm saying
anybody can do it.
Oh, it's very easy. And I think the cool thing about gaming to me in crypto, it could be the killer onboarding, really, let's call it app. You could have millions of people play crypto Candy Crush Suck, like Bejeweled or whatever, or Farmville, if the right game is around the corner. And then they're like, oh, so how do I play this? Well, you got to get this wallet thing. Fine, I'll get the wallet just so I can play this thing, And I think right now we're kind of, like we just said something cool about like, let's not get people into Web3. Let's get into gaming, and then they'll get into Web3 because they need to game.
This is the beautiful piece. I think this is the best part of this whole conversation that we're having, is that I am going to make a bold claim here. And I believe that gaming is actually what's going to drive mass adoption of crypto.
100%. But there's historical proof.
Yeah.
Web 2, same thing. Web 1, same thing. Web 0, same thing.
And it's just like, if you guys remember, like everybody has TikTok now. And TikTok was not a thing. Like 3 years ago, my 11-year-old niece like wanted me to be in a TikTok video, and she did a little dance thing. She's like, you got to do it with me. I suck at dancing. And I did that. And then I downloaded the app because I wanted to see the video. I was curious, right? And then next thing you know, I'm like, wow, this is cool. And now I have 140,000 followers on TikTok, doing my own things, and I don't dance, by the way. Just by the
Sure
way,
you don't.
You know what I'm saying? But it's really interesting because I feel like that's what gaming's going to do, because like the cool part is because it's not focused on the crypto, it's not focused on the wallet, it's not focused on the Web3, it's focused on the game. And that's why I believe that right now, and that's why I like I said, I review 100 pitch decks a month from crypto games that are coming out. I only like seeing 2 or 3 of them that I actually invest in and do stuff with. But
I know the Canadians are being really, really sweet, but just get in there and
I kind of wanted to talk about like the future of gaming, and what I'm going to touch on what I kind of said when I started was you can take your NFTs with you, and that's kind of what I'm focusing on with NFTs right now. I'm not really focusing on the NFTs and their prices and where they could be in 5 years or whatever. I'm actually accumulating NFTs because I read a book called Ready Player One, and it's funny because Corey referenced the Oasis yesterday, and I'm accumulating NFTs that I could use in a future Oasis, because right now we're building metaverses. But in the Oasis, it was referenced that there were metaverses that were built. I don't think that they were called metaverses. That's from Snow Crash. But they had built their own individual games, and then the creators of the Oasis came along and bridged all those games. So I'm actually accumulating NFT gaming assets so I could use them in the future, like Gundams and starships and
like an investment.
Avatars.
NFTs for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, going back to like the mass adoption through gaming, I think yes, 100% gaming could be one of the things that like brings mass adoption. I think one thing as like a space that we really need to like focus on, and we're starting to do better at, but not fully, and it was touched on a little bit yesterday, was really like the UI and UX of these apps. If we want to onboard,
needs us to explain what UI UX means. So that means user experience, what you're seeing on the screen, how it works for you.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you think about that, like all the applications you use nowadays, like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, right? It's really easy to use. It's really easy to sign up. You enjoy doing it. There's all those like micro interactions, and it's fun and it looks really good. We're sort of at the stage where that's starting to happen in the crypto space, whereas some teams are just very small and they don't have maybe the resources. Maybe they're just like more back-end developers, Solidity developers, and they're really good at developing the smart contracts. So in order to like take gaming forward, like ideally, the ultimate end state would be everyone has their own private hardware keys. They store their own 12, 24 word recovery phrases. Maybe they use multi-sig, which is essentially you have multiple of these wallets, and you may have to approve a transaction with 2 or 3. Maybe that's the ideal state. But I think the developers in this space really need to think is to get the next wave of people to adopt it, even though that's the ideal state of you owning everything and being really secure, is that how we bring people on? And I think there's some teams that do like a really good job, for example, like Taurus, where you can actually just create a wallet through your Google sign-on, right? And then maybe in the future, maybe you educate that user and you can maybe transfer your assets after you know a little bit more about crypto to your own wallet. So I think like just developing apps that are more what we're all used to using will help with adoption.
Yeah, and I think like there's blockchains coming out that are focused on that, like Flow blockchain, where you don't even have to have a browser extension or anything. You just click it, and it sends you a code to your email address. You type the code in, and then boom, that's it. You're logged in, and you have a wallet.
Guys, I think that's a crazy point. I usually call that Web 2.5 technology, and I think one of the things that we've seen in successful projects, not just Web 3, but from Web 1 to Web 2, it's projects that build bridges, and help people migrate. And then, like you said, then you kind of like get into 2.6 and 2.7, like just leapfrogging from like nothing to everything. No one really does that unless you're like the 1 or 2% of the innovators on the, that graph, that diffusion of innovation. I think we talk about adoption, it's the 13% usually, not the early majority. And they need some sort of bridge. There's some sort of migration path. And I think that's going to be when you look for successful products, like where's the 2.5 projects? Where's the bridges? I think that's very important. So email, Google account, Facebook accounts, that's fine. We're not going to kill Facebook overnight. Just let's use it.
Oh, please, let's do.
What? What's that?
Oh, please, let's do.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, I'm after TikTok, but that's another conversation.
That's for another time. So with 19 minutes left, I feel like it's going quicker. Like you just keep flipping the numbers. I'm like, what is happening? Is time going? Oh, it's NFT time. Got it. So I want to ask a couple things, and then want to see if there's questions in the audience. But I'm thoroughly enjoying this. But I do want to talk about hardware. So there's environmental issues. There's all these questions people have. That maybe they don't know what they don't know. Like we talked about the Y2K bug, right? Like we as technologists sitting there, changing 4, 2 digits to 4, we're kind of like rolling our eyes, like, come on, the planes aren't going to fall from the sky. Like we got this. But it was so sensationalized because nobody really understood what was happening. So they thought this crazy thing was going to happen, even though like that wasn't really going to happen. So I think in this instance, like hardware and environmental issues, I get questions a lot about that too, because we have, pretty decent sized graphics cards at the house. And so for mining, and gamers are always, complaining. So I don't know. It's kind of just an open-ended question, like hardware, environmental questions.
I'd love to just touch on that briefly. I'm not a hardware expert, but I've been saying for a long time that anything that you have to use your hands to interact with the device is analog technology, kind of like a rotary telephone. And that we don't have those anymore, like this microphone or a keyboard or a mouse. That's all analog technology, and that's very old school. I mean, we all grew up using it, but soon we'll be able to perhaps interface with devices where you don't have a physical machine, that it's all streamed to you, and you just basically have a screen or you have glasses. And even that's analog, but that too will be upgraded on. That's it.
Yeah, just going off the environmental thing, I think the industry has progressed from here to like out the door out there, but I think the media is still like 2 years, 3 years behind the curve, right? Like I think Bitcoin doesn't do the media has picked it up in a way where, hey, this proof of work, where it's a consensus mechanism, how that really it takes a lot of energy to secure the network, essentially, right? And what you've started coming out over the past year is that actually what people are looking for is the cheapest energy sources. And a lot of the cheapest energy sources are things like solar, or you even see things like what they're doing down in South America with like the volcano and like harvesting energy from that in order to power these mining rigs. So a lot of the things that are actually happening in space, yes, it does use a lot of energy. However, a lot of teams are starting to use natural resources and capturing these energy resources as well. And then I think another thing that will be really good for our industry is the upcoming merge for Ethereum from proof of work to proof of stake, and that will be a really, really big thing, I think, as well.
We're not going to get into like explanation of, proof of stake and proof of work, but something to start with. If you're looking to, whenever we say do your own research and like go out there and study, start with that. Start with what proof of work, proof of stake, pure proof of work, or pure proof of stake. All of that stuff is really, really good to understand for the basics.
Yeah, I think both of you guys had really great points. One of the things I am worried about is something that you said, and this is what kind of scares me about Web3 is that it feels like now we've preached so much about decentralization, and then we're like ushering in centralized solutions, and it scares the hell out of me. Even what you said earlier about democracy, it's dangerous. Democracy's proven through time to be the most not unjust
Direct
and
democracy.
scary,
Yeah.
destroyer of civilization. Democracy is, popular vote, and popular vote is wrong. That's why we have in America political systems that, like electoral college and things, to protect us from the majority. So majority and consensus, yeah. I mean, we have so much work to do in the space. And hardware, I actually love what you said because it's so true. It's so interesting that we've been raining on how destructive crypto is and decentralization and the hardware required to run these things. But in return, it's actually incentivized people to come up with cheap and effective energy sources that we wouldn't have had if Bitcoin didn't get to 67,000. And people are like, oh my God, how could it? And now with Bitcoin back down to 30, they're forced to find things or they're not going to be profitable.
So with the hardware stuff, I find it interesting because I worked in the machine translation world for a while, working with translation stuff. So Google Translate, for example. So I worked in something else that was based on the same algorithm. Long story short, in that world, it's really not about the algorithm; it's about the data, right? So you could have the best translation algorithm, but Google will always beat you. So it's Google, Bing, and this other company I was working with. So Google and Microsoft won because they would actually build castles on hills next to springs of water, natural water to cool them. That's how much infrastructure they had to build just to keep the data cooled down. Bitcoin doesn't, just proof of work doesn't need that. So people talk about Bitcoin. Like, what about just translating from German to English? Do you understand the amount of hardware that goes into what Google does and Facebook, for goodness sake? I mean, that's ridiculous. So we
Twitter
should,
Spaces,
yeah,
the compression
yeah,
that has to
absolutely, right?
happen.
And just think about when you search on Google and you type one character and they predict the next. Do you understand the amount of hardware? So I think one question when we get asked that in our world, in our Web3 world, is like, really? Even if we like run Bitcoin times 10, times 100, doesn't even come close to like one Google product. So that's one answer to that question. But the other thing to me that's interesting is like I'm starting to thinking about Web3 as an inflection. Well, right now, and I talked about it before, Web 2 plus and Web 3. And I think Web 2 plus and incredible hardware, advances in like VR and things like that. Whoever's working on VR right now, good luck. No, seriously. Like, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg has been working on it for 10 years. Good luck, man. Yeah. And I mean, that's a great thing to take on, but you're taking on the monster. Good luck. So you got to do a lot of hardware work there. But what excites me about Web3, when I talked about WASM 3 and things like that, you can actually take pen and paper. I actually designed a pen and paper game 7 years ago for my children to teach them how to code, like a little lamb, whatever. You can actually write that on WASM and put it on your Arduino. So like hardware, it's absolutely ridiculous. So I think Web3, the way we start diffusing capital and in such incredible like energy efficient ways, you can actually like build very exciting social games like the Bejeweled, the Marios that don't really need that much hardware, and we can actually build like think of Axie Infinity. Just Axie Infinity for me, it's funny when I looked at the numbers. Now they're about 2 million users, but I think when they were like 1.5 million users, I think they hit $1 billion in sales. And when you look at one of the top, I think it's probably the top right now, but casual game, Candy Crush Saga, they have about $1 billion in sales, if I'm not mistaken, but 270 million users. So that's like 270 versus 1 million. So you can get 1 million users playing a very simple social game on Web3 that generates more revenue with less hardware and less users than like the huge monstrous games that are going to be 3D. So I'm actually excited about the little games, the small games, the slow games, the games like playing chess like in a week. That's super exciting. You know, like I make a move, you make a move, we'll meet for beer. I'm asking my friends for advice, come back. And I think there's a lot of, there's actually a lot of opportunity to go back to the pre-Web 2 world and reinvent game mechanics that we can actually implement now that we couldn't before, but we wish we could have implemented before. So I actually think we're going to see multi-billion-dollar games that are very simple. Back to energy, they don't need that much hardware.
Okay, perfect. No, I was just gonna say about the hardware. Like, we have a couple Solana nodes. We just got another Solana node in. It costs like a ton of money to actually get the hardware required and the whole supply chain issues and everything. So there are teams that are starting to give access to Solana nodes and doing that. But I think overall, like, I think Solana gets a bad rap about, hey, you're not very decentralized. And I think that will improve over time. Like, if you look at the background of one of their co-founders, I'm not a Solana maxi. I like different chains for different reasons and everything. But I just think like Solana, if you look at the background of their co-founder, he comes from Qualcomm. He sort of said that over time, if you look at the advancements of chips, like you can see how fast they have become, and the cost will keep decreasing. They'll keep getting faster, so you'll be able to push more transactions through. And I think like Nvidia and AMD will probably be some of the biggest companies in the world going forward over the next 10 years. So I think like Solana, just if we're talking about like environmental concerns and other concerns about like Solana being decentralized, I think as these hardware requirements come down and the cost of them come down, I think you'll start to see that network become a little bit more decentralized as well.
For sure. If anybody has a question, okay, you do, Cynthia, and then we'll wrap it up. 8 minutes. I try to keep this guy. He drives a hard bargain here. Yeah, exactly. I'm like 8 minutes. Oh my God, is it going to flip yet? Do you want to grab a mic?
I get.
All right, thanks. Great panel. Thank you all so much. I used to really enjoy games about 30 years ago. And then, life happened. And now that I have a nephew that I'm trying to get closer to, I've tried to revisit gaming. I started with Decentraland, and my avatar was attacked. Assaulted. And so what I did was I changed my avatar to be a white male. I've named him Big Chuck, as for the movie Ready Player One, that reference. And I haven't gotten assaulted as Big Chuck. When I'm hanging out with other women on Decentraland, I'll change it back so that it's an avatar that represents myself. But my question for you is, with Web3, will there be any opportunities for me to participate in gaming as a Black woman without the cloak of anonymity that comes with having to purchase skins?
I
can take
know how to
that.
answer that. Yeah.
That's so. First off, I am an old school gamer, and we have always had this problem. I mean, we have always had this problem, and I think that in the cloak of anonymity, I hope I said that right, people are their absolute worst, and it is a very real problem that we deal with. battling with racism, battling with bullying online, battling with just everyday issues that maybe, people are talking about behind closed doors with their friends in the locker room or their racist dad or uncle or whatever, right? And in the metaverse, I do believe that this is going to be one of the biggest moral and ethical dilemmas that we've ever faced, because we want to be decentralized and we want to promote freedom of speech, and we're worried about authoritarian handlements like Facebook, like you said earlier about the person who had the metaverse tag. There's going to be. I wish I had the answer. Maybe someone else on this panel has an answer, but I do believe that there is going to have to be some sort of a governance in a decentralized field.
I'd like to just touch on that. Like, so if you have a wallet with all of your NFTs in it and all of your avatars and things like that, and you're on that account, you're on that wallet, you're not going to risk something like that, because that could get you flagged by other players who could PK you, which, player kill, or they could hunt you down, or someone could launch a bounty on you, or something like that. There would be those social justice like guilds out there that would protect probably you. That would probably be developed later on in these types of games. But in terms of never experiencing that, I'm almost certain that's not an issue that could be solved in the near future.
They just automatically mute. It's
I know.
Just magic.
First of all, I'm like shocked that it was 8 minutes now it's 13. So
Did you guys notice that? All of a sudden now we've got 13 minutes.
So that just blew my mind. I gotta flip back. But you know what? So I just want to touch on 2 points on that. Well, there's a lot of points, but just 2 really briefly. One, in real life, if someone acts like that, unless there's like 1,000 cameras around that they can, and those cameras are connected to some sort of like smart contract, it's really hard to detect, right? Okay. So you notice that maybe a lot of people will not do that if there's security cameras around, right? Like you got to be hidden, it's got to be in the dark. Okay. If you design a 3D environment, even 2D environment, but especially a metaverse environment, and I'm wary of calling 3D games metaverses, but that's just me. But basically, a 3D game, if you like The Sims, you can, if you design it well, and that is something you think about up front, or you're made to think about afterwards, you can really design code that detects every pixel movement, every little movement. You can see this person raise their hand. You can detect that. You can see this person said this. You can detect that. It's an event in the database or in the smart contract. And you can actually create, going back, I want to go back a little bit to the previous panel a little bit, but you can detect that even autonomously. You can actually write, just like we write right now, I think it was Jasmine. She's looking at training machines to detect security threats, like we detect spam. We can detect bad behavior for sure, right? So that person's character could probably freeze if they act in a certain way easily. And going back to the previous panel, one thing I wanted to mention, but I didn't. I think before we even get into DAOs or even games, because games need to become DAOs, I would say, especially games like that, we got to design constitutions. So constitutional design is important. So in the constitution, if you have values and you say, this is a no, I don't care what you think democratically, but we, the constitutional founders, the fathers and mothers, and that build a constitution, say this is a no, this is a no, this is a maybe, this is a yes. Then you can actually code that and say the no's freeze your character, the maybes flag you, and if you got 3 flags, the yes, go for it, but whatever. So I think there's a lot more interesting things we can do programmatically if people think about this up front. Much more interesting. That's actually an area where you can have more fun potentially than in real life, which I hope it doesn't happen, because I would love people to have more fun in real life. But I think, to your point, I think there are decisions at a design level that we can make to make things better in these new worlds than maybe even in real life, for sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Your question.
My last question will be, you ever heard about buying real estate in the metaverse? And do you think it's going to be profitable to buy real estate and even accessories in the games, like weapons, items? Do you think it's going to be the future market to investing in the metaverse real estate?
Yeah, so I think it's a hard question to answer. Not financial advice or anything like that. I think it will be hard to pick winners in the space. Like there's going to be so many games, right? Like it would be hard to pick winners. Like you said, you see hundreds of decks and you may only invest in a few. But I think there will be some out there that will have real value in some games and certain metaverses. And I think what we're doing at least is to be able to, let's say if you own that NFT, that's the land, right? And you wanted to rent it out to someone else for either a fixed fee and earn some passive income on the side, or you wanted to maybe there's some revenue that's earned within your environment. We're also building a framework to share a percentage of the revenue, both with maybe you rent out the land for free, but you want to take a percentage of the revenue for in-game rewards that are played within that environment. So I think there will be certain things that are very valuable, but again, just picking which ones are would be very, very hard.
So onto those 100 pitch decks that I review a month. We finally just announced a strategic partnership with a game developer of a game called Rebelbots, and I'll just use this as an example. Rebelbots has a very cool system, very similar to what you just mentioned, to where to play the game, you have to have land in the game. And your Rebelbots are literally NFTs, and each of your NFTs have different traits and characters. Like you'll have a different arm that has this ability. You'll have a helmet or something. Like everything does something in the game, and it's kind of like battle bots where you're battling your robots against other people's robots. And your land it plays a very important part of that because you craft items and things like that. And your land has certain abilities, right? So we actually just did a huge deal. We raised about 50 Ethereum to invest in these land plots that come with some of these Rebelbots. And what's cool about this is like earlier I said that I have like 1,500 players that play these games. I don't have time to play these games anymore. So what's really cool is we actually have a revenue share model with what we call our scholars, where we're investing in the lands. We raised the 50 ETH to buy these lands. And what's cool is they get to play and into the game. And this is where the Web3 gets really fun. Okay, I know you don't like using crypto. So will you say Web3 games that are really fun is because I can say it. Is that you can actually have these models built out from the game development side to where it actually rewards people like us to invest in them who don't have time, because I'm going to be giving these assets to my players, controlled wallets, not giving them, they're renting them, they're leasing them, right? And what's really cool about that is that I'm going to earn a percentage, 4 to 6% of whatever they do on my land, plus whatever the profit share is with the battling. So there's lots of cool opportunities like that are coming out. And I would just say the number one thing that I'll leave you guys with this when it comes to crypto gaming that I've learned, the number one way to win is to just get in before the hype. Like I will tell you, I have definitely held the bag many times where the game is hyping and I'm like, oh my God, and I FOMO in. Right. And I'm sure you guys in NFTs have done the same thing. I FOMO in. I bought like some racehorse for like $1,000, a digital racehorse, and like I was racing that thing and it was making me, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a 16-day ROI. This is amazing. And then at day 14, it tanks to nothing. Right. And I'm like, no. So get in early, do really good research. And I will tell you this right now. I just hung out in a room full of VCs last night at another conference, Decentral, that's also here. And guess what? Every single one of those VCs that were just throwing money at everything over the past year is now looking really hard and really deep into the brands behind them and the brand of the founder. And are these real people? Because I do believe that we are finally past the stage of that PFP, the profile picture, anonymous people. And now the money is being very stringent, especially in this bear economy.
I will tell you that somebody who's so the difference between like doxed and undoxed, which I always thought was odd last year when people were saying all of that, and somebody like me who's doxed AF, right? Like you can find me on every social media platform. Now the VCs and the corporations and all of my clients are like, well, now we're investing in people that we can point to, that we can go to on LinkedIn. And as much as everybody, that sucks, but we're moving so quickly into how is this going to benefit? And the gaming especially, because that's such a solid brand.
And right now, guys, you are so early. Everyone in this room. I know that we always say
It's
that.
still moving fast. So.
But I'm just telling you right now, like right now is the #1 time to build your brand in crypto, because there's still so many projects coming out that people are hiding behind anonymous people. Like I've just been in this space like really hardcore deep since October. I'm already Twitter verified. I'm already speaking at events. I'm speaking at CoinDesk. I'm on the media panel. Like this is a really incredible time for all of you guys to really make something into, I believe, the best emerging market there is, especially in the crypto gaming side.
There's one more question. Can we get 10 more minutes on the clock?
You can take your time.
Go ahead. We no longer need you, sir. We no longer need you.
Father
We
time is
love
fed up.
you. We love you. Go ahead.
My question was, you spoke about Ready Player One in the book, and you spoke about the Oasis. Now, is there like something of that coming about that we don't know about, or that I don't know about?
That's being built, I believe. I think first you can't put the cart before the horse. So like these metaverses are being built, but it's only going to be a matter of time before you want to take your Millennium Falcon over to Star Atlas, or you want to take your sword from Sandbox over to Minecraft's version, or whatever it could be. So I think there will be a demand for it. It just
That's
might
the
not
thing.
be
It's
right
a
now.
demand, right? Like,
Yeah.
when are people? This is economics. Like, if people want to do that, then somebody's going to make the way.
Yeah,
But
I'm
do
seeing
they
a
want
lot
to?
more like cross-chain games. As I game on like the Wax blockchain, and I'm seeing a lot more of like cross gaming. And so I was just curious if that was actually something that's going on, or
I do want to just say one more thing, Simon. Sandbox and Star Atlas did a collaboration where Star Atlas brought their assets over to Sandbox, but they couldn't bring their actual assets over to Sandbox. So they had a contest where Sandbox players using their Vox edit would build the Star Atlas spaceships, and then you'd be able to own those in Star Atlas. But I believe it's going to get to a point where you could actually have your assets from Star Atlas and fly them around in Sandbox.
And there are like I wouldn't call them Oasis. I would say they're more like town squares, and that are being built. Like Epic Prime is one of those companies that's building something out. I think they already have partnerships with like 64 different games and platforms, and their founders, Winston. I mean, they're really onto something cool. I do think there's lots of space for everybody. I mean, yeah, they're doing it now, but who knows? It could be someone else. But I think that we all agree on here. And I don't want to speak for everybody, but like the one thing that is not going to happen, at least from us on the Web3 side, is Zuckerberg's metaverse. Like,
Say that again.
Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse, right? Like for me personally, like so I have been banned from Facebook so many times. I have been in what they call Facebook jail, right? Like my partner Trisha right there. She is literally I had to communicate through her sometimes. I'm like, "Hey, I can't post this." Like I'm sending her messages like, "Hey, imagine in the metaverse when you say something that, nobody agrees. Well, let's put it this way. I think over the past couple of years, we found that Facebook's definition of misinformation is information that they don't agree with.
And just going off of that question as well, like we are starting to see that, and we're working with a company right now that has got together with a few other games and have said, "Hey, we want to collectively share our communities and build our communities together. So we want to start doing cross game rentals, essentially, right, or cross chain rentals." And that's the real power of Web3, right? Like bringing these communities together, not just your own community. You can find another community that shares the same values and expand that together. Also, one thing I want to say is like I feel like over the last year, I've heard the word metaverse like way too many times. It is really cool, but I also I think going back to that like Web 2.5 type thing we were talking about earlier. I think there's lots of use cases for NFTs, and we'll start to see that like in real life.
And that the teenagers roll their eyes, right? Like in Clubhouse, my 17-year-old would be like, "You guys are dumb. Like we've been in the metaverse for years. Like what? You think you're new?"
Who's metaverse?
No.
Who's metaverse?
Well,
Mark's?
wherever he's at. I don't know
Right.
where my son's at.
Yeah.
Roblox is
Can
a
we-
metaverse, right?
Is it fair? Maybe a great way to close the panel would be to like, can we each define what we all believe the metaverse to be?
Sure.
Like,
I believe we're living in a simulation.
so, so this is what bothers me. All right, because there's this debate about the metaverse that really bothers the hell out of me. Because the metaverse, a lot of people think that it's like this virtual reality metaverse thing, and that we're gonna be like these. I can be whatever I want in the metaverse, and I can have hair. Like tonight, I've been bald for a while, and tonight I'm actually gonna be speaking at something called the Global Metaverse Festival, and I'm gonna be like
I'm not going to that.
as I'm live. You're gonna trip out as I'm live talking about these, things on the webinar. They have a computer that's going to be literally taking me and live converting me into a metaverse character,
They
like
did that
on the thing.
other day. We were there yesterday, and they were making somebody dance as we were standing there. Like, it's bizarre.
But what's crazy is that I don't believe that that's the metaverse at all, because I think that the metaverse is just the ability to transfer assets from one thing to another. That's it. That's all I believe the metaverse to be, is the actual transfer and use case of moving assets from one thing to another. And what I think is really a huge tragedy right now is that you have these big corporations like Facebook or Meta now who want to redefine what the metaverse is, and I definitely have a problem with that.
I think
Honestly,
we got a
though,
question here.
do we have one more question, and then I really don't want to take up. Obviously, I would sit here and talk all day, but I am very respectful to my friends here. What is your question, sir?
One of the things you guys mentioned, and in all honesty, I would disagree that the when people are anonymous, it's always the worst. I think that it also can be the best. And one of the things that was talked about, and one of the things that I really liked about in terms of like the ethos of like really early internet, when there were message posts and you created communities, no one knew who other people were. And I think that that's essential to teach people collaboration independent of who they are, how they look, or whatever. It's more what they think, right? And I actually think that the idea of doxing is slightly overrated, when I think that one of the considerations, and this is something that Dan mentioned, you have more control in this environment and you can have full identity. And one of you guys also mentioned, like, you can have reputation. You won't risk your reputation. Like, you can have low accounts that are new. So I think there's solutions, and I think that maybe one of the considerations, and I don't know if anyone had some other thought about it, like, I really think that thinking that anonymity is bad, I think that anonymity can teach a lot of things to people in terms of collaboration, and not caring who they are, but how they think or why they think something.
So if I could just answer that. So I think there's gonna be places where you don't want anonymous people to run things. I think, I don't know who said it yesterday, but like, if I want to give you my money, it would be nice to see who you are. So first of all, I just want to say I'm really happy you mentioned LinkedIn. Coming from TikTok and all that. It's really hard to be anonymous on LinkedIn. If you are, you're not really on LinkedIn, and I think LinkedIn is very important. You want to do business with people that you eat with, and you see it. So in that, but as a user in a game, or maybe someone who wants to like live in the blockchain metaverse world, I think you should be anonymous. But here's one thing: if you go back to the other question, anonymous identity doesn't mean anonymous behavior, right? So that player XYZ is really toxic. That should not be hidden. You should not be, recreating that account. And there are some studies on the internet. I can't point to them offhand right now, but there's some studies about that. It's not really not us knowing who you are, like where you're from and all that. It's just knowing that there's one person behind that, like Satoshi. So here's the thing: his identity is anonymous. Good for him if that's what he wanted. But his behavior, his language, his thought, his legacy is right here. That's not anonymous, and we should respect whoever he was or she was or they were. So I think that the idea of anonymous behavior to me is something that I'm not very happy with. But I think I agree with you. There should be places and times when we're anonymous, and I'm pretty sure. Again, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm pretty sure we're all gonna have a LinkedIn profile. and a .eth address or a few, and a bunch of addresses that nobody knows about. I think we should have all of that available to us.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, being as doxxed, being as public as some of us are, I've had some very scary things happen because of, especially the TikTok thing where people, it's very one-sided. They get to know you. The social media thing is we kind of joke about it. I walk into like Friendsgiving and they're like, "What's up, TikTok famous?" And it's a joke, right? But it's also a little bit scary. I've had some, some stalkers. And in a very scary way. So you have to like weigh those pros and cons. But absolutely, and I love analytics, so I have some anonymous accounts, so I can watch what happens over here with Brooke J. Lacey being completely doxxed. Everyone knows who I am, and then over here you don't know who I am, and it's fascinating to see what happens. But the behavior of the people who threatened me were anonymous, so that's not okay. And I had no legal recourse. Make me a little emotional. It was very scary.
Yeah, just going off that, I agree with you. Like, and I agree with everyone that there's, I guess, certain places that anonymity is good and anonymity is good. Hopefully, I said that right. And there's certain places where it's not so good. And if your behavior is just out of line and you're not being a good human being, then that's absolutely not okay. And I also started like here, some of like the big crypto Twitter people have started sort of moving away from their main accounts to try to like start up their like more anonymous account, because maybe their brand is this, but maybe over time it's hard for them to move away from their brand and they just want to speak their voice and hear what people are saying. So you're starting to see that as well, where people are creating these other accounts just to maybe not act a certain way, but just try to get feedback from different followers, or gain different followers, or hear different opinions, just that aren't skewed based off who they are and who they've become known to be.
I actually have a admission. I am a public figure, speaker, and such. And yeah, I have to admit, I have anonymous accounts that I use to make comments about things that I know if I said them as myself, I would get canceled. And I think we have a very interesting line to walk as far as like what's okay and cancel culture, and it is a reality, and we have to be careful. And you're right. And actually, I think Jorge, you're absolutely right. I think that there is definitely a good use case for being completely anonymous in some cases, and then there's not. And I will tell you though, as a matter of fact, and I will debate any of you on this, in gaming, it's bad. It's really bad in gaming. Like in gaming, it's just. I can't tell you how many times I go on and I have, people of color that we roll deep in Call of Duty. And yeah, it's like N-word every time we go into the lobby, and he's as soon as they hear his voice, they know, and here comes the word. So
that's why I stopped playing Call of Duty.
One use case, I shouldn't be talking about dating because I've been married for a very long time, but I mean, I should talk about dating because I have a daughter. I have 2 daughters. But point is, I think it'd be interesting to see anonymous dating sites where back in when I was very, very young. Listen, so hold on. Let me finish this because let's see. Hold
That's
on.
what Tinder is already. It's all fake pictures.
Wait. Can I just say this? There's, you can actually go and express what you believe, what you think, how you see the world, like sort of like no inhibitions. And if you like a person, based on what they think, what they believe, where they come from. I remember running a little dating site like early 2000s on like a social network I developed. And I saw people get to know each other and become such like basically soulmates by aligning on values, on ideas. And then they would see each other and they're like, you know what? We're a couple. This is awesome because we believe so many things. And I think a lot of the times when you just put people face to face, and then they build the stuff that they could potentially not say before because they're not anonymous. So I think there's interesting. I just threw that out there because I saw it happen in the bulletin board era where nobody knew who you were. Like Satoshi. I don't think we'd be here.
Satoshi is a female, by the way.
Okay, whoever she is or he is or they are. But the point is, I don't think we would actually be here doing this if someone forced him, her, they to dox themselves up front. I don't think they would have launched Bitcoin.
I would watch that TV show. Like, I would watch that TV show where like
Well,
they
isn't
have
there one of
metaverse
it?
characters.
It's called
though?
like Married at First Sight or something.
yeah.
where
Like,
they
I
sit
wouldn't
in
go
the
as.
pods
I mean,
or-
how about
Just
how
me?
about like a first date, not like married, but I mean,
No,
like it'd be
there's
good to know
there's
each
an
other
experiment,
first.
Though,
Yeah,
on
totally.
Netflix that is something like that, where they get to know each other in these like little pods, and then they go back like a year later because it's now been like 2 or 3 seasons. That some of these are still married, they're
Really
thriving, the best
interesting.
relationships.
So
because
that's a demand signal that people kind of crave anonymous sort of interactions first, just so they can put all the other stuff aside that comes with it.
they're seriously going to kick us
Or
off
like-
the
or
stage.
like The Voice,
Seriously,
right?
You
The
guys, I love
Voice.
you guys, but they're going to kick us off the
Anyways,
stage.
there's anonymous use cases, a lot of them that we should explore.
One last question: do you think we're living in a simulation? Yes or no questions. I mean, yes or no answer.
Yes, it's likely.
No, I would say no.
I don't think so.
1,000% no.
How many of you believe we're living in a simulation? So somebody is you're the player and somebody is controlling some entity. We'll talk about it later.
Some people call him God, but I mean that would be like. I mean, if that's a simulation, I
It's
mean,
open. It's like an open-ended question. I just
Yeah,
asked
but
if
yeah.
you guys had seen the glitch in the Matrix. It'll keep you up at night. Have you seen it? Where like there's non-player characters already here. Anyway, that's where we're gonna end. Thanks so much, you guys. This is awesome. We had a lot of fun.
All right. Thank
you
y'all
so much.
very much.
Yeehaw.
One big round of applause for the panel.